Hi, everybody. Welcome to Episode 6 of Unbreakable. Our topic today is relationships and chronic illness. Kate, you're obviously dealing with chronic illness, but you've also been married and in a long-term relationship for a lot longer than I have. So I think we should start with you.
Well, in my situation, when we first got together, we were extremely active, and a lot of our activities had to do with being outside, walking on trails, hiking mountains. We got into bodybuilding. I mean, we were just extremely active, and it was stuff that we did together all the time. And then I became ill. Um, Everything changed because I was so sick that he had to become a caregiver, not just a spouse, which I imagine must be incredibly difficult to transition from having this partner that you have all this fun with and you're doing all these amazing things together to suddenly, you're a caregiver, you're not sure what's wrong with your partner. Because forever doctors had no idea what was going on with me. And suddenly we couldn't do any of those things. And in my situation, I was really lucky because the person that I'm with is amazing and never gave up, never got frustrated, never questioned that there was something wrong with me. And I know that's not true for other people. I've heard many stories about other people where they're married and, they change and their husband deals with it for a year or two and walks out. And unfortunately, that's really common. And it breaks my heart when I see that. But in my situation, he was extremely supportive. But it did affect us because we went from a couple who was extremely active to being a couple that was wrapped up in chronic illness. And there were times that he was even afraid to just touch me because a hug hurt, or if we were sitting on the couch watching a movie, cuddling up too close would just change the balance of the couch and it would hurt my whole body. And we went through a period where there was no closeness, and it was really, really hard until I could obviously get some treatment and start to feel better. For a while there, though, he became extremely scared of hurting me. I mean, if you could imagine being in a relationship with somebody that you love for a really long time and you just want to be close to them and you just go and hold their hand and move closer, and just, the weight or the shift in what they're sitting on causes them pain. Could you imagine how that would feel? And I do have a lot of empathy, so I knew that he was feeling that way, and it hurt me so much. And I hate to be so negative, but chronic illness changes relationships in a really, really deep way. You start to look at each other differently. Instead of being your best friend and your partner and someone to have fun with, now it becomes this worry. The way that he looked at me was different. It was always with concern and fear of not knowing what was happening with me and wishing that I felt better, and me wanting to be the person I used to be and him wanting me to be, the person I used to be, so that I would try really hard to recover. And I think that was the biggest change in our relationship. So yeah. But
You're very lucky, though. And like you said, I think you
mhm.
know that. because
Absolutely.
often when things like this happen, um, relationships don't survive. Um, it's too
Mhm.
much for one or the other, or both for that
Mhm.
matter. And
Yeah.
it takes a lot of work and a lot of dedication and love. Really
Mhm.
does.
Yeah, it does. But I mean, I know that you went through a lot of dating experiences because you went through all of your changes at a very young age. So even before you were dating, you were starting to, have all these issues physically. So what was it like for you?
Um, well, when I first started dating, it was easier because I was so young yet. So I was dealing with just um, the chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, and of course the hearing loss, which of course doesn't really set a lot of people to excitement when yeah, I'm deaf, I have hearing aids. A lot of people right away have no interest. Um, and then of course as things developed, um, the vision loss I would say is probably one of the biggest or hardest um, to get people to understand, like truly. Um, for me, you know, I mean, most people work 9 to 5, typical job. Um, but for me to go on a date in the evening is extremely um, stressful for me. Um, and depending on what restaurant you pick, whether day or night, considering the lighting, I'm going to be completely inept to be able to speak properly, to maybe hear you properly, depending on the background noise, depending on, the lighting, things like that. These are things that most people don't think about.
Mhm.
Um, so it does become hard to not only connect with people, but for people to, eh, the nicest way I can put this is be willing to stay. To be willing to put up with it because it's basically 24/7. It doesn't change for me. This is how it is.
Mhm.
Um, uh, and that's why I am always upfront and honest about, you know, what I have because for me it's a big part of who I am and it explains a lot of what you're going to be seeing when you meet me, and get to know me. So
So do you tell them on the first date? Is that one of the conversations
I
that you have?
usually tell them pre-date
Mhm.
because um okay, from my personal experience, I've met majority of people online first. Conversation on the phone. Progress to meeting in person. So at some point between that time, I will. This is this is that. This is this is what I have to have. This is what I would need. Blah 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 blah. And if you do make it to the date, great. You know, um, but it doesn't always mean anything either. It takes a special
Right.
person, that's all I'm gonna say. It takes a very special person.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that whether you're dating or you're just in a relationship already, it does take a very special person to take into consideration. And that's the sad thing because this is the way relationships should be in the first place.
So,
But I mean, it does take a person who's willing to look outside themselves and their own selfish needs and want to see the happiness of the other person and want to have a connection and can say, you know what, we can't do this or that, but we can do all these other things. And in my situation, that is how he looked at it. He looked at it
awesome.
yeah, it wasn't about what we couldn't do. It's about what we can do still, or what we can do now, or the new things we can try.
That is absolutely what you need. Yes.
Hmm. Did you ever get into a situation when you were dating where somebody thought they could deal with it and then they were just difficult?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Were you ever in a situation where you started dating someone? I know you said that you tell them right away. So, were you ever in a situation where you were dating someone and they thought they could deal with it, but then, things started to get really difficult and it wasn't exactly
Not
a.
dating, we're still married, probably.
Mhm.
Yeah. My first and only. But yeah, my husband at the time, uh, he really did not handle the progression of my diseases, between the fibromyalgia and the chronic fatigue. It was harder and harder to keep up with irregular hours of a job. And then my eyes started progressing to the point where, I started being restricted to not being able to drive at night. Um, and instead of being supportive and understanding and adapting, it was instead more of, uh, don't think that, just because you get free money from the government, that means anything.
Mhm.
Um, you're still not pulling your own weight. There was never anything that I could do good enough in
Wow.
that case. So, what about you?
Well, I mean, I think at this point we could probably get into the topic of sex.
Okay.
um, Nobody wants to talk about sex. Well, maybe everybody wants to talk about it, but they don't say they do.
Yeah.
So, in my situation, that was like the hardest part because we have a very passionate relationship and an incredible chemistry. And it got to the point though where he was afraid to touch me, like I was talking about earlier, just, sitting on the couch watching a movie. So if you could imagine how that translated in the bedroom, he was just afraid to touch me and hurt me. And it got to the point where I was just like, you're not going to hurt me. It's okay. Yeah. Um, but I think it's hard for people because for spouses or partners because they want to be supportive. The ones that do want to be supportive almost take it to a point where um, they don't mean to do this, but in my case, I kind of felt like I was diseased or, you know, unclean in a way that nobody wants to touch me or
An
whatever.
analogy that
Huh?
can I give an analogy that I think you're going for?
Yeah, sure.
um, from what you're describing, it sounds like he was treating you with kid gloves, like you were this delicate flower,
Yep.
and he just nothing, he would wanted nothing to happen to you that would hurt you, and especially from himself, right?
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
So that's kind of what I'm picking up.
Yes. But at the same time, I felt like, and it's completely unreasonable because it wasn't what he was projecting onto me. Like you said, he just was like not wanting to hurt me. But in my case, it made me feel um, just like unclean and dirty and whatever, filled with this horrible disease that caused me to have these issues where I couldn't be intimate and people were afraid of me. And it was because at the same time, I was losing relationships. So all of this together was really hard to deal with. Um, so our sexual relationship suffered. I'm not going to lie. And it was really hard for me because we were a very passionate couple. And so for me, I kind of felt like, oh my God, something horrible here is happening because, you know, we we were just amazing and now we're not. And oh my God, what is happening? And he's thinking, oh my God, I don't want to hurt you. Um, and there's not, I would sacrifice everything to make sure that you're not hurt. So, and we were communicating this to each other, which is really important. And I know a lot of couples have trouble talking, but you really have to talk it out. We got to a point where we were able to come together in a new way so that I wasn't hurting, where we could communicate so that I could tell him, today is a day where my body is hurting and it's not going to be okay. Or where I could initiate things when I was feeling okay. But communication is extremely important. And I think a lot of couples really have a hard time just being vulnerable and saying, hey, this is what's happening with me.
I agree with you. I mean,
Hmm.
just on a regular basis, couples have problems with communicating with each other.
Hmm.
And when you have someone with chronic illness, you know, I think it's even more important and more essential
Hmm.
to communicate on both sides your feelings and thoughts and, observations, because otherwise you're going to drift apart, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I know a lot of people in the chronic illness community who unfortunately have lost their husbands because of their illness and drifting apart and not being able to communicate, and unfortunately the unwillingness of their husbands to adapt to the situation and be loving. Instead they choose selfish needs and move on and leave. um, but a lot of these same women find men who are just thrilled to be with them no matter what. And so, there are people who are just amazing, and those are the people we need to be with.
Right. Right.
But I mean, what about you? Did you have any, since we were
Um,
talking about sex, did you have any issues when it came to that?
yeah, for me, obviously lighting.
Right?
No candlelit dinners for me, thank you. Um,
Mhm.
but I guess I would say one of the biggest things as far as, the pain, the randomness, the flares with the chronic, I'm sorry, with the fibromyalgia. um, you might be in the middle of an intimate moment and a vital support part of your body just gives out. And it just, you're now, cramped up in pain. There's nothing you can do except just try and wait for the pain to go away, do the leg, take the medicine, whatever. But at that point, there's nothing you really can do.
Mhm.
So, that's happened to me on more than one occasion. Um, and of course, it's not easy for anybody. It's not easy for me to have to say no. It's not easy to disappoint my partner. Um, but as far as partners go, um, generally they were understanding. Generally,
Mhm.
there was a few. Unfortunately, I married one that wasn't as much understanding, but
Mhm.
um, for the most part,
That's good. I mean, I think we're both lucky in that regard because I know that there are plenty of men who are not understanding.
I don't even wanna say men, though, either. I don't wanna say it's, typical gender. I think people in general. I would
You're
like to
right.
specify that.
You're right. You're right. I mean, there are a lot of
We can be pretty shitty too, sorry,
yeah.
but
Well, no, you're right. You're right. Um, in general, there are a lot of people who are just looking to advance themselves. And when they get into these relationships, they're happy. But as soon as it changes in a way that's challenging, they want to move on, to somebody else or whatever else because that's the agenda that they had to begin with.
right,
So, and those people are not, as painful as it is, uh, they're not worth the tears because, the one thing that I've learned being chronically ill since 2013 and even before that, but that's when I was diagnosed. One thing I've learned is who is real and who isn't. I've learned who is somebody I can depend on. Somebody's going to be there. Someone who will, walk 2 miles with me when the car breaks down, that kind of person. Those are the people you want to be with.
whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member, you know, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
That's what I value,
Me too.
with especially with chronic illness. I really don't remember much of my life without it. But I can tell you that just having the acceptance and the support, the understanding goes such a long way.
And, I've said this before, and a lot of people are like, what? I am almost grateful for my experience because I do believe it's made me a better person. And I know a lot of people struggle with their experience like I did in the beginning, but I finally got to a place where when you're in a dark hallway of your life and you don't know where you're going, you don't know what the next, corner is going to reveal to you. You could turn the corner and there's a bright light and a whole new life just waiting. And so you have to have faith that once you get to the end of that hallway, there's going to be something great. And for me, it was a community of people who are just amazing. And I never would have met them had I not gone through this. And it changed me in a really great way. So I am
I'm right
grateful
there
for
with you.
that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you too. It's like as bad as my conditions may be
Hmm.
or yours may be, um, when you realize and you look back and you realize how much you've grown and how much stronger you are as a person, for me, it almost makes it worth it.
Yeah. It's hard to say that. It's almost hard to put the words out. But at the
I know,
same
but that's the
time,
best way that I can.
yeah, but it's true. And I get you. And I know other people who are listening, get you too. So
You grow in a completely different way that no one else will understand unless they're going through it too.
exactly. So here we are with the question of the week. How did you come up with your podcast name?
It's a really good question, first of all.
Hmm.
It is actually called Gonzagi. If I said it wrong, I am so sorry. But that is the best way I can say it at the moment. But the Gonzagi is a Japanese art of mending broken objects using gold or silver epoxy. The Japanese believe that when something has suffered damage and has a history, it becomes more beautiful.
Hmm.
So this is where we got the inspiration for the name of our podcast.
That's an awesome answer. Because I mean, I think as people who have disabilities or chronic illness or mental illness, we a lot of us feel like we're broken, but we're not. You know, like we were just talking about, the experience can actually make you stronger, make you feel more powerful, and put your life in a perspective that is stronger than it was before.
Right, right. And it makes me think of, like the warriors back in the day, they were proud of their scars because they survived it. So why shouldn't we be?
Exactly. I mean, you may
What
have cracks in you, but they're filled with gold, and you are more beautiful.
absolutely. So now you know where we came up with that.
And yeah, exactly. So, okay, so the media spiel. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course here on YouTube. You can leave comments on all of our social media. We are looking for your questions. Hopefully, you'll give us questions. And if you have a really great one, we will feature it on our next podcast. You can send us your questions. If you have any need for support, you can also, give us messages anywhere. And, if you're looking to get some support and you don't want people to see it, the best thing to do is go to our Facebook page and message us privately. And of course, we will message you back as soon as we can. We love your support. We love your, likes, subscribing, your love. All we want to do is give back to the community that gave so much to us.
Yes, absolutely right. If we can be there for you, um, that's pretty much the whole point.
Exactly. So, what is the topic of next week?
So next week's topic is going to be chronic illness risk factors, like living every day. What is the risk factors of with chronic illness? I apologize.
Which I think is great because, especially right now where everybody's thinking about risk factors, uh, we've been dealing with them this whole time. So, in
And
ways
again,
that
not an
probably,
in-your-face episode at all, but just kind
no,
of to give you perspective as to what some of your loved ones may be going through right now.
right. So, the quote of the week is: "The friendships that fade when you're chronically ill is life changing. When in crisis, it's only then. Remember, anyone can love you when the sun is shining. It is when the storms where you will really learn who truly cares for you."
I absolutely love that quote.
I do too. I do too.
It really is so very true. So,
That's right.
and
Yep.
on that note, I hope you guys remember that you are not alone, and hopefully we will see you guys again next time.
Everybody be safe and see you, Spoonies.
Bye.